You're listening to Focus, Fury, and Friends, the essence of a good time.
A War Machine Mark IV podcast that explores the privateer press game that has stolen the hearts of thousands.
We bring you the latest and greatest privateer press news, the hottest of takes on tactics and playstyles, and an exploration of the game for those new and old to War Machine.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jason.
And I'm Dustin.
And we're here to talk about all things War Machine and other fun stuff that we enjoy. I've been a gamer for War Machine since the beginning of Mark II. How about you, Dustin?
So I played War Machine since about the middle of Mark II and then all of Mark III.
Awesome. And I like to play Circle. That was my first faction. I played Trolls for a little bit, and then when Crucible Guard came out, I moved over to them as well. So I own Crucible Guard and I own Circle.
Yeah, I've owned quite a few factions, but the only ones I've really played is Convergence of Cyriss and Crucible Guard.
So yeah, we have a little bit of a conflux there in what we like to play, and it's been fun. We've played a few mirror matches back in Mark III.
Yeah.
Hey folks, so we have a little announcement to make. One of the things that we want to do to give back to the community and to be active and encourage new players and old to enjoy the game and really appreciate some aspects of it. Dustin has a contest that he would like to announce.
All right, everyone. So what we're going to be doing is running a contest for the 10 Years of Clockwork Perfection. It's an online campaign that I've been doing pretty much solo, just showing off some painting and conversions of the Convergence of Cyriss, because it is the 10-year anniversary of the release of the Convergence of Cyriss this year. Our goal with this campaign and this contest is kind of just to draw attention to the anniversary, as well as just all of the awesomeness of the Convergence and their beautiful sculpts and the art, and just really kind of highlight, I think 10-year anniversary is kind of a big deal. And ultimately, my secret agenda with all of this, or maybe not so secret agenda, is to inspire Privateer Press to do some sort of alt-sculpt or mini crate to mark the 10-year anniversary. I know we've got a lot of 10-year anniversary celebration stuff from them before, for War Machine and for Hordes, and as well as like the Zero casters that they did, all that kind of stuff. I'm just hoping to kind of nudge them a little bit to maybe get a some sort of acknowledgement that it's been 10 years since the Convergence of Cyriss has released. So for this contest, how you can enter is we're going to do a drawing in January. The prizes will be, one is a heavy floating vector kit, which is the out of print, very hard to find kit, will be given out to a entrant. We'll also have a necklace pendant type thing from the release day event that they did for the Convergence of Cyriss. So back in the day, for many of you who may not know, when they did releases, they would do coins or pendant style necklaces with like a logo or something to mark the occasion. And one of the last ones they did was the Convergence of Cyriss one, and there is one that is a Directrix looking medallion, one that is a Syntherian looking one, and an Enigma Foundry looking one. And I have a Directrix looking one that we'll be giving away as part of this contest. And then the third thing that we're going to be giving away is yet to be determined. We'll make an announcement once that's decided. We've been kicking around a couple of options, but nothing's really made it onto the list just yet. So that one's to be decided. But we wanted to get this out as soon as possible to let everyone know. So what we'll be doing is we're doing a drawing in January. At the end of the 10 years of Clockwork Perfection, we'll be doing a drawing, and how you enter is you'll just need to tag us, Focus Fury and Friends, and Privateer Press, and show off some sort of painting or conversion that you've done this year, and tag the 10 Years of Clockwork Perfection hashtag. And you do those 3 tags and a photo on Facebook or Instagram, and you'll be entered for the contest. What I wanted to do is it's a single entry just for tagging us in any generic thing that you're posting up on social media. And it'll be 3 entries if it is a converted model. So the other thing that I'm a big fan of in this hobby is converting things or modifying things, not just your regular stock standard, I got the model and then I painted it. It's always like the little extra bits of flavor that people can put on. So it'll be 1 entry for anything that you tag us in, and 3 entries if you do some sort of conversion or custom work on your model in the photo that you are tagging us in.
Awesome. Okay. And I just out of curiosity, is this something that you want to do, encouraging people to do new stuff, or can people enter in stuff that they've done in the past?
I think they can do either or. I don't have a preference. That'd be awesome if we inspire people to do more painting of new stuff. That would be great. But if it's stuff they've not shared before, I think just really drawing attention to Privateer Press and getting our name out there for the podcast for the 10 Years of Clockwork Perfection, and then FocusFuryandFriends is the goal. That's what the goal is to get people seeing our podcast and to be drawing Privateer's attention to the 10-year anniversary of the Convergence of Cyriss release.
Okay. And then also, it doesn't have to be convergence related, right? So like if somebody's working on a conversion of Magnus and Invictus, but in the style of Orgoth or something like that, that's totally good for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So while all the prizes are going to be convergence related, your entries do not need to be convergence related. They can be anything. And well, anything Privateer Press. I'll even accept Monpoc and Warcaster stuff, but we're not supporting any other games though. So if you tag me in some Infinity or something, then that's going to be cool, but it's not going to get you an entry.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Dustin. And yeah, we want to entice some encouragement and participation. So we'll be doing some things like this throughout the course of doing the podcast and other things.
Oh, I just want to add real quick. If anyone has any questions about anything about the contest, they can just message us on Focus Fury and Friends on Facebook or on the Instagram, and I'll be answering any questions anyone has.
So today we wanted to talk a little bit about, for news, the new release of Magnus the Unstoppable.
Yeah.
So what are some of your thoughts about Magnus, Dustin?
Well, I think first, aesthetically, I really like the way that Magnus and Invictus look. I think everyone knows this at this point, but it does bear repeating that Invictus is the first super heavy Warjack. He's an 80 millimeter character jack that looks like he'll only be available to Magnus4 and will work for every army in the game. And I do believe that's more of just a cool 20 years celebration thing and not a lore thing. I see a lot of people online asking, oh, what's the lore behind him working for Orgoth or whatever? And I don't think that there's going to be any kind of lore justification for him working for, say, Orgoth or Crix or Infernals. You know, these inherently just people he would not in the lore work for. I think it's just a cool anniversary thing, and you just got to give it that what is it called? Just let it happen. Just allow it, because it's just a cool 20-year celebration thing, not something that's actually happening in the lore of the War Machine universe. Yeah,
just a cool model for everybody to potentially own and celebrate and play with. Somebody even pointed out when they were arguing about the lore that he is titled Magnus4, and I believe we only have Magnus 1 and 2 before this, do we not?
Yeah, that's correct. And then one thing I like to point out to people is the paper that they did their little spoiler for at the Bokor Brawl convention said traitor, warlord, patriot, unstoppable. And clever people deduced they were talking about Magnus for Magnus the Traitor and Magnus the Warlord. And now we got Magnus the Unstoppable, who's apparently the fourth iteration. So I don't think it's too big of a jump to assume that Magnus the Patriot will be Magnus 3. I think that because of their delays in the production and stuff, it probably was originally supposed to be announced before Magnus 4, but problems being what they are, it's got worked around a little bit. And so now they have Magnus 4 coming out before Magnus 3, who I think will be a Cygnar Warcaster. That's what it sounds like, Magnus the Patriot. I don't think he's going to go be the Patriot for the Protector of Menoth or something.
Yeah. I think that was the argument that most people were saying is, wait, I thought he just came back to Cygnar. Why is he a mercenary once again? So, yep. Cool. All right. Well, this model, as you said, comes with 2 models. Should we talk a little bit about some of the stats?
Yeah, I think we can briefly go over him real quick. I think he's important enough to enough people that it bears breaking him down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do it. Should we start with the fact that he is a character field allowance with a point cost of 20?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that one?
I think that's actually pretty cheap, to be honest, considering I think the thing you can compare him to probably the easiest is Asphyxius. He obviously is different in a lot of ways, but a really powerful junior warcaster who Asphyxius is 12 points. And while Magnus is probably not quite as good as Asphyxius 4, he is really, really good. And I definitely am thinking that Invictus is worth well more than the offset of points of how. So it's 8 more points from Asphyxius to go up to Invictus. So I definitely think that is a pretty good bargain with what you're getting out of Magnus and Invictus, with the one caveat of if you kill Magnus, Invictus goes away. There is no inert or going wild or any of that, or autonomous. He is removed from the table if Magnus dies.
Just disappears. Yeah. Let's talk about the lore about that one, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, I think when I've looked at this model or this pairing of models, I think I start thinking about, well, what are the other 80 millimeter models that are out there? But I think that might be a mistake as well, because this is a super heavy jack, which means we should really be looking at what are the stats of the jacks out there and how does this compare to those?
Yeah. I know comparably it is still really good. I think Invictus, if he was just himself without Magnus, would probably easily be a 20-point model.
I think I agree. I mean, if you look across the board, a lot of the character jacks that are out there are pretty pricey, right? There aren't any character jacks that are 20 points exactly, though, are there? Are there any that are more?
Not that I know of. I know all the Mark IV ones are 17.
Yeah.
And Invictus is better than all of them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, I would definitely pay 3 more points to turn Morlock or whatever the Orgoth one is into Invictus. That would be worth it to me. So let's keep going down Magnus's stats. We got a little sidetracked there.
Sorry about that.
He's got 10 health. He is tough and has dual attack. As far as his basic stats, he is speed 5, arcane attack 6, mat 7, rat 6, defense 14, arm 17, arc 5 with a control of 12. Those are all okay. The only thing that's really stand out to me on that stat line is the mat of 7 and the defense of 14. Seems good.
Yeah, for basically a super solo, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Then we've got Feign Death, which is he cannot be targeted by ranged or arcane attacks while knocked down. He's a journeyman warcaster. I'm going to assume everyone knows what that means. And then he has a limited battle group, and it is actually limited, where you can only have Invictus in his battle group. So you can't take Magnus with Invictus and then say add a Mangler or whatever other mercenary Warjack. It's literally only ever Magnus and Invictus. You can't add anyone else.
Yeah, that's I think that's an acceptable limitation. I'm trying to think.
I think so too.
Like I could picture somebody in, say, a Hordes faction, one of the, can we even call them Hordes factions? I think we still will, but say a Scorn caster bringing this guy along and then trying to fit in another Jack.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
Honestly, I would do it if it was allowed. If I could run Magnus with other mercenary Warjacks, I would definitely bring a Swabber. Would be the first one I'd reach for, because I really like the Swabber, and I had one because my old Strange Bedfellows list that I painted up that I like a lot. So I definitely would be trying to work him into other lists if I could, but it's not allowed.
Yeah. I'm sure we'd all have our druthers for something like that.
Right. All right. So let's get into his weapons. He's got a rocket launcher. It's pretty decent with a range 14, AoE 2, POW 14 on the main attack, and then 8 on the blast. This does have cumbersome, however. So if he does attack with this, he is not allowed to attack with anything else. So if he uses the rocket launcher, that's the only attack you get.
Okay. And
then, I was just going to say his other ranged attack is a scatter gun. That's spray 6, POW 12, which I don't. The rocket launcher is okay, and the scatter gun's okay. I think just because of the cumbersome, it's basically putting him to where you're just going to shoot that from range. I don't think you're ever going to sacrifice your melee attacks to shoot that rocket, but at range, you'll make use of it.
Yeah. So the rocket launcher, let's talk a little bit more about that, because I think that's one of the spicier items on this guy. This thing is a range 14, AoE 2, with a POW 14 for the primary and then an 8 on the blast, which is a respectable rocket launcher. As some people have said, it looks like an RPG. So that thing is huge in range.
Yeah, but it has no arcing fire, at least. It is a very long range, considering he can walk 5 and then shoot 14 and 19 inch that range, but it is, I think, okay, given that it has to be direct line of sight from him.
Sure. Now, the next concern, I suppose, is how likely is it that people can increase the range on that rocket, potentially?
I was going to say, I don't think anyone can do it but in mercenaries.
Yeah, because it should be a friendly faction, right? Is that the way that the spell is usually verbed?
Yeah, the snipe is always friendly faction. There's no faction range extension that I can think of. Yeah,
I'm looking at Baldwin right now, and it is indeed friendly faction. So yeah, mercenaries can make him fire farther. And if you happen to have the tower on your side of the table, get him in the top of the tower, get an extra range on him.
Yeah, I forget about that thing. I forget about the guard tower. I guess anyone could potentially do that as well. His melee attacks, he's got Foe Cleaver X, which has an armor-piercing star attack and powerful attack. So when attacking with this weapon, this model can spend 1 focus point to boost all attacks and damage rolls for the attack. And then he's got a Iron Fist, which is a POW 12 with beatback. So I think that's an interesting combination of melee weapons. So you got the armor-piercing star attack, then powerful attack only on Foe Cleaver, and then with the Iron Fist, you can use beatback. So you could actually push someone and then follow up towards them. I don't know what you're doing with Magnus that you resulted to be pushing people around with beatback, but it can be randomly really relevant to get those different angles for threat, especially when you can have dual attacking and then get a 6-inch spray. Again, I don't think it's anything crazy, but at least gives you some non-linear threat that Magnus himself can do.
Yeah. I have looked at his melee weapons and thought about the combo that somebody would probably use with it. Unless they're trying to get him over to another model, it feels like beatback is probably not what they're going to go for, since Foe Cleaver X has powerful attack on it. Just a little more, what do you call it? A little more bang for your buck when you're only spending 1 point to boost the attack and damage on those.
So one thing that's interesting to talk about is the star attack. So star attacks, from my understanding, you sacrifice all of your other initials in order to do a star attack. So in this instance, you would be sacrificing your scattergun and your Iron Fist initial to make the armor piercing attack.
But I think we might need to check the rules on that, because last I remember, and this is of course 4th edition, so this may have changed. We may have to look this up. Star attack is, or what you're thinking of for the star attack, is actually for beasts. If they use maybe you're right.
So I think there's a little bit, people are waiting to see a ruling on this, because from what I've heard is the high-level judges in War Machine, one has ruled it one way, that it is all of your attacks, and the other person has ruled it that it is only your same type of attack. So it would be just your melee, not your melee and your ranged, or just your ranged if it's a ranged star attack. But I don't think there is an actual ruling on that yet. So the question is, do you sacrifice all of your melee for a melee star attack, or do you sacrifice everything when you do a star attack?
Right, since he is a dual attack model.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that the star attack there is mostly just to make it so that the first attack you deal with that particular weapon is that attack is the only one that benefits from armor piercer. Any subsequent attacks would not gain the benefit of armor piercing. So let me see if I can look this up. While I'm doing so, what are some of your thoughts on his game plan just by himself?
Well, let's go into his spells real quick. They're worth mentioning. He's got 3 of them.
Yeah, we've got spells. I'm sorry.
You're good. He's got Convection, which is if he destroys I'll start with this. It's a range 10, POW 12. And when it destroys a living enemy model, you can give 1 focus point to a Warjack in your battle group in your control range. His other spell is Energizer. Each model in the spellcaster's battle group and is currently in his control range can immediately advance up to 2 inches. And you can only do Energizer once per activation. And then last but not least is Hellrot. Target cohort model in the spellcaster's battle group gains +2 arm and retaliation. If a model with retaliation was damaged by an enemy attack during the last round during your maintenance phase, it can advance 3 and make 1 basic melee attack. Basically, it gives it vengeance and +2 arm to his Warjack. Obviously, that's the only thing you can put it on is onto Invictus, and that's an upkeep. And so I like the spell list. I like Convection. I think it's a good spell. It's a not very good nuke type spell, but it has some corner case things where it could actually be super relevant. And then Energizer is, of course, great for a Jack that's not going to get a ton of buffs from your faction. I'm assuming we're not playing mercenaries. And then Hellrot puts Invictus into a really good spot with giving him +2 armor and vengeance on a pretty serious threat already. So I think in total, he's pretty great. Gotta be honest. Even if Magnus was just a junior Warcaster without Invictus, I think you'd be looking at spending some serious points on him. Again, just going back to Asphyxious being 12 points, which arguably is too much, but Asphyxious has some other things. Obviously, he's got his solo servitors that he brings with him and Dark Shroud. But I think they are comparable as far as like the super solo element. They're close, if not exact. I would say Magnus, honestly, maybe 7 points solo by himself.
That's what I would expect for him just by himself, is about 7 points.
I mean, even then, I gotta be honest. Playing Convergence and Crucible Guard, if I could bring him, I maybe would go up to 8 points and not really think too hard about putting him in most of my lists, just with this spell list. And being able to bring, say, you only brought just like a regular Mercenary Jack, I still think maybe 8 points I would still bring him and not think too hard about it. I think you get up to like 9 or 10, and then I'm going, oh, is he really worth that? And maybe, because this is all a lot of speculation, because we haven't had this on the table yet at all. Obviously, it's not for sale yet. And I haven't played him in War Room either. I don't know if he's actually in War Room. That would be interesting to check out.
Definitely.
80mm and Magnus.
I'm sure by now somebody has tried to at least do something to play test what he's capable of.
But yeah, I think he's easily a 7 point solo, if not more, by himself.
Yeah, I would say so as well. He's got, like you said, he's got a good package. Now I'm not looking at his card right now, but you are. Does he have magic attack on any of his weapons?
Folk Cleaver X, he does.
So Folk Cleaver X is a magic. So yeah, that's I was looking at his card, and especially the convection, and I thought, okay, this is how many focus that he's spending right here. It might be better to use it elsewhere, especially when he has the powerful attack on one of his melee. But one thing he can be doing with that ranged magic attack is doing things that ranged magic attacks can do. Right? There are some models out there that, for example, it's not Windstorm. What is it? The one that reduces the distance of a ranged attack by 3.
Oh, I don't know. They changed too many of the names. I don't remember all of them. For Mark IV now. But yeah, I know you're talking about the reducing range of ranged attacks.
There's tech that reduces ranged attacks, but some of that tech is not effective against ranged spells. So that's...
Yeah, then there's other ones that are specifically against ranged spells. But that's, I feel, much more rare.
Indeed. And also, a ranged spell is useful against models that are incorporeal as well.
Yeah, so that would be the other thing. So I think convection is an interesting one, because I think on a caster, normally you're not thinking about casting it a whole lot. Whereas I think on a junior, it seems better on a solo than it does on your warcaster, because your warcaster has so much stuff you want to do with them. You want to be putting on your jacks. You want to be doing your meaningful activations, and convection sometimes is the right thing, but it doesn't seem like it is a lot. Whereas with a solo, especially with Magnus having a jack with an arc node, that seems much more likely to come up. At least to me, because you want to be having Magnus hang out in the back for a lot of this. Like I was saying, the biggest weakness is that if Magnus dies, Invictus goes away. So if you're wanting to keep him safe and he's sitting back there already camping for focus, like, why? You don't have anything you're going to lose by throwing out a convection.
That's true.
Whereas on a caster, it's a much bigger risk, I feel like, to be like, I'm just going to do a 2-cost spell right now.
Mm-hmm. He's also a very survivable solo, and with scenario where it is right now, a lot of people are complaining about solos not being able to, withstand most basic attacks. So he's definitely somebody that could camp on a far flag and hold it for a bit.
Yeah, as long as you don't have anything super threatening coming towards him. But I think you're right. I think you want him, if you can't get him on your friendly flag, you want him sitting there, and I think he'll hold that down. Yeah.
Incidentally, when we were talking about the special attacks, I'm looking at the rules right now, and I feel like feel like maybe we're mixing some of these rules up again with...
Listeners, this is Jason from the future. I'm editing this video, and I have since come into the actual rules, which I was missing during the recording of this episode. I apologize for the confusion, but under the combat actions section, there are several bullet points that say that during your combat action you may choose one of the following things. One is to forfeit your combat action, one is to make an initial attack with each of your melee weapons, one is to make a number of initial attacks with your ranged weapons according to their rate of fire, and then one to make a star attack or to make a star action. And that was the confusion. I didn't have that rule at the ready, so sorry about the confusion, everybody. We'll get you back to the episode.
It's always assumed. So I feel like there's some confusion going on there, because I know
definitely
it does become particularly relevant with Invictus. So I think everyone's wanting to get an answer. It is relevant to both Magnus and Invictus, but it's a much bigger deal on Invictus for what he does.
Right. Okay. Well, then should we move to Invictus, or is there anything else we want to talk about more with Magnus?
I don't think so. And then we can talk about Invictus and then kind of do a recap of what we think of both of them together.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Do you want to read off his stats, or do you want me to do it? I got it here in front of me.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Because, nope, never mind. I got it. Ha. The moving around on the app is actually quite nice. So Invictus is a character Jack. He is a super heavy Jack, the first of the super heavy variety. He has 34 boxes, basically an entire complement of hit points, other than the two bottom corners. And then on his card, he has, let's see, I guess there's Companion. So his rule for Companion means that he has to be in the force with Magnus, and if Magnus is destroyed, then he's removed from the table. He also has a bond with Magnus. It has the typical rules for a bond, which state that he doesn't have the bond if he's under an opponent's control, etc., etc. But while he is bonded to Magnus and in his control range, he gains Retaliatory Strike, which is if he's hit by an enemy melee attack during the opponent's turn, then that attack is resolved. Afterwards, he can make one basic melee attack against the attacking model. Under his stats, he has a lot of little, icons, the special rules. He has Unstoppable, he has the Trample ability, he has the Slam ability, he has the Headbutt ability, Dual Attack, like all Jacks do, and then he has an Arc Node. Now, did we talk about, we'll talk about that in a second. The Arc Node, I think, is actually quite relevant. He's a Speed 5, has Mat 7, Rat 6, Defensive 9, and Armor 20. And then on his weaponry, he has 2 ranged weapons and 2 melee weapons. On his ranged weapons, on the left side, he has an Obliterator. This is a Rat 6, range 12, rate of fire 1, AoE 3, dealing a power of 15 on the primary and 8 on the blast. And it has the following rules. It has Arcing Fire, so that when attacking with the weapon, this model can ignore intervening models, and then it has Critical Knockdown. On a critical hit, the model hit becomes knocked down. He has Flamethrower for his other range attack. This range attack has the pistol ability, which means that he does not suffer in melee penalty for himself. It deals fire, and it will give the continuous effect of fire. It's a Rat 6, Spray 8, rate of fire 1, POW 12. So 2 very good ranged attacks. And then on his melee, on the left side, he's got the Scrap Saw. This is a range 2, POW 18. It has the rules of Critical Shred. On a critical hit with this weapon during this model's combat action, after the attack is resolved, this model can make 1 additional attack with this weapon against the model hit. And then it also has Sustained Attack. During this model's activation, when it makes an attack with this weapon against the last model hit by the weapon this activation, the attack automatically hits. So, a Scrap Saw that will most certainly scrap most anything, at least during his activation. Then he has the Battle Flail. This is the really cool one. It is a range 3, and it's a POW 18. It has the chain ability, meaning it will ignore the armor, no, not the armor, the shields and buckler abilities on other models. It has critical knockdown. On a critical hit, the model hit becomes knocked down, and then it has the Thresher Star Attack. The Thresher Star Attack, this model makes one melee attack with this weapon against each model in its line of sight that is in this weapon's melee range, regardless of whether that model is a friendly model or an enemy model. Thresher attacks are simultaneous. So, and that's the star attack that we were talking about that everybody's going to be concerned about. If he uses the Thresher Star Attack, does he not get the basic attacks of any of his other weapons?
Yeah, and so for the range, it's important because that's all there is, right? There's no buying additional ranged attacks. So you're sacrificing your Obliterator and your Flamethrower in order to do a Thresher.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think a couple of things worth pointing out here on his attack profile. One is critical shred and sustained attack have a little bit of scornergy going on because you want to roll criticals to get your additional free attack on the shred. But if you hit something, you've already triggered sustained attack, which means that your next attack against your same target will automatically hit, which means there is no roll to try to get the critical shred. So I thought that was funny.
It is. I think it just gives him an option depending on what his target is. If he's hitting a target that's easy to hit, then there's no reason why he should not be rolling to hit each time just to get that critical shred.
So I don't think it's a may though. I don't think you can just roll an attack because you want to. If it says it automatically hits, I don't think you roll. So I don't think you can get the critical shred. That's my point. If you're hitting something that you want to critical shred multiple times, you want to attack the same thing over and over again, this won't let you do it. Once you hit once, if that one hit isn't a critical, you have to get a critical to get the second attack, but it has to miss for you to be able to get another chance of trying to get the critical, which you can't miss because you already have sustained attack. So it's just like this weird scornergy thing going on. Because in my understanding of the rules is you can't choose to roll for it. It says it automatically hits. You can't say, oh, I know it hits, but I want to roll anyway. I don't think that is a mechanic that you're able to do in the game right now.
I think this is a good item for us to send some feedback on.
Yeah, I think so too.
But
unfortunately, these are the rules that are. This is before there was the leak, and maybe if someone would have caught it then and pointed it out, maybe, or a play tester could have got this fixed. But as is, they are not changing anything till January. So this is the world we live in till then, at least. So I think that is a interesting little bit of scornergy on his scrap saw.
Perhaps. Although I'm looking at it and thinking, it looks like the way it's designed is you get a crit on the first attack, you get an extra attack, which automatically hits.
Yep.
So, and maybe that's what they intended.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Or you're going into multiple targets, right? So if you go into two things you want to attack, and your Thresher battle flow isn't enough, you want to do your scrap saw, you choose one and then the other, and then you can bounce back and forth between the two. It's just not as good, obviously, into a single target. So if you're like going after a colossal or something that you know you want to hit a lot over and over, Invictus is a little bit less good at killing them.
Interesting. I think he's got some really good options on him personally. His output of damage is very good.
I think his output is really good, and then the one thing that surprised me is he just has a regular Warjack health grid. I mean, it's a hefty one for sure, but I was expecting there to be like another 2 lines, maybe another 2 columns that would be something along the lines of the Ret Jacks, where you've got to damage the force field first before you start damaging the damage grid.
Yeah,
I thought they were going to do some sort of like superstructure. You got to damage him at least this much before you start going into the grid.
Ablative armor or something like that. Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, well, we'll see. I'm sure most everybody, as excited as they are about this model, we're going to see a lot of gameplay out of him from our players, and over time, I think we'll start to see where we sit. I personally like this Jack. He can deal some very good damage from afar, and then when he commits into melee, he can put a lot of hurt out on somebody else.
So here's my question to you, Jason.
Sure.
If you were playing Crucible Guard and Invictus was just a Jack that you could take, even we'll keep him as a non-friendly faction. He was a mercenary Jack, but you are allowed to take him with your caster. How many points would you spend on him?
I'd spend close to 20 on him. There are two things that I really like about this Jack. Number one, he has the arc node on him. That means that when he gets out there and is launching his weaponry and that kind of stuff, your caster. That's why I think a ranged spell on the caster is really good, because he is an arc node, which means that that spell can project even further.
Yeah.
That's tricky because we know that there's only one spell that we really are going to be arcing through this, right? But the other thing that I really like about him is when you are playing on a table and you have an opponent, and that opponent is looking at your 80 millimeter, very large looking, menacing Jack, that is a significant thing that they're going to be just trying to decide how to deal with it. And just the psychological warfare of something big like that being on the table is an impressive thing. You can use him to bully certain areas of the table, and I'd be quite happy fielding this guy for close to 20 points.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at 20 points, even without Magnus, and in some weird world where he doesn't benefit from any friendly faction buffs, I still think he's a 20-point Jack by himself. So I really, the one downside, like we said before, is if Magnus dies, he goes away. That's the big worry about bringing him. Now, I don't see any other reason, though, that you wouldn't want to bring Magnus and Invictus.
Sure. Now, one thing that's interesting to note also, though, is that you mentioned bringing this in Crucible Guard. I think that this guy is a lot more valuable in Crucible Guard. I think that Invictus is particularly handy in a faction that debuffs targets, because we all know that when you can't buff your models, then your buffs don't really work on them. But if you're debuffing other models, it works for everybody, which means I think Crucible Guard is one of those factions that will very much like using Invictus.
Yeah, I agree. Anyone that has significant debuffs or any caster that even has one or two is going to want to be bringing Magnus and Invictus.
So, yeah. That being said, I'm kind of excited seeing how he plays into my, along with my circle forces. It'll be an impressive sight to see, and plus it's just such a cool looking model. That both of them are.
Yeah, I think they really hit the War Machine aesthetic here really well. I think that between Storm Legion and Orgoth, it felt a little bit like their aesthetic was getting kind of watered down almost, but Invictus just hits all of those right notes to me. He is very iconic War Machine style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's very much. he looks like something that crawled out of what was that board game that they made? Grind.
Grind, yeah.
So, yep. I'm particularly excited. And when we're talking about aesthetics, a lot of players are going to be doing some very interesting things with their Invictus to make them a little more personable for their forces. I think I saw on the internet somebody was making a Crix version of Invictus. They were using some of the some of the pieces of Deathjack, and I think one of them had what's the character that has the big giant harpoon?
I don't know. I don't know a character that does that. There's the it's not the Harrower. One of the Crixjacks has the harpoon.
Yeah, but it was impressive. It was fun to see people getting excited about it.
I think it was an inflictor cannon actually, because it's supposed to be the flamethrower.
Right.
And then they had the big giant chain axe blade, and then they did I can't remember, the Devastator or Destroyer, one of the Khador, the one that has the chainsaw arm.
Mm-hmm.
So I take the chainsaw arm from a Khador Heavy and put it on. It's pretty cool. And I definitely plan on modifying mine, of course, to be more Convergence-like, especially Magnus. Can't have any of those non-robotic humans running around. I like doing the conversions on my guys, so I'll figure something fun out to do with Magnus and Invictus, but I'll decide what that is once I actually have the model on hand and can see what proportions I'm working with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So,
one thing I wanted to touch on, we kind of skipped over this, is together. What do you think about them together? I do feel like that they are both good separately, but they are particularly good in the pairing that you're forced to take.
Okay. Yeah, the force is significant. Did we talk a little bit about feign death on Magnus?
I mentioned it. We didn't talk any more than that it exists.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any factions that can somehow knock him down so that he can basically camp on a flag or something like that and then be knocked down and then can't be targeted by range or arcane attacks.
You could set it up where if you have Earthquake or Quake or what have you, where it knocks them down, but you'd have to be in range of an enemy target, so you'd have to, because you can no longer attack your own models at all. So you can't. I couldn't mitigate or saw him and do one auto play and then have him knocked down. You can never attack your own models. So what you'd have to do is have him next to some other thing and then some enemy model, and then you target the enemy model with the knockdown ability. But yes, you could do it, but it seems convoluted to try to pull that off. So my example of the mitigator, you'd have to be next to something, next to a solo or what have you, a grunt, knock it down with the mitigator saw, then that also knocks down Magnus. But in order to pull that off, Magnus has to be, up in someone's business. And then you have to make sure that you kill that thing as well, because otherwise you're giving them a fresh and easy melee target in Magnus who's knocked down on the ground, right? True. So it seems unlikely, but of course, in the hundreds or thousands of games that he's going to be in, I'm sure it's going to come for someone. But it seems very corner case and highly unlikely. I don't think you can build for it, I guess is what I'm getting at. I don't think it's a strategy you can plan to do. But if it comes up, it would be funny and maybe useful, but it seems very corner case.
Yeah. It would be extremely hard to manufacture your own scenario on that. I think it's there simply for the fact that he has tough, which means that if somebody rolls and deals the damage, he takes that tough roll and succeeds on the tough roll, he is now no longer targetable by ranged or arcane attacks. So. Yeah,
that seems by far the most likely scenario in which that'll be coming up as he gets that clutch tough roll and then he sits there unable to be targeted.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun.
So one thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that Magnus increases the threat range and increases the armor of Invictus, as well as between the Bond and Hellrot, gives him potential to have 2 out of activation attacks, on top of being a model that has 4 initial attacks, and one of those is a spray, and one is an AoE. So that is a lot of offensive output to have in one model that is going to be relatively hard to kill. Like, he's almost as hard to kill as a Colossal. with the spell coming out from Magnus.
Yeah, +2 armor on an already base armor 20. Yeah, that's a significant threat. Yeah, we'll see. I feel like people are definitely going to learn how to hunt down Invictus or even Magnus himself. Just because, well, we're going to see a lot of them, and almost everybody is going to potentially have the Blessing of the Gods for your command cards.
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't know how relevant that, but yes, everyone has that option to take that. So if it becomes relevant, if Magnus becomes obviously everywhere, then I think that'll be a more likely command card that you're going to want to reach for.
Yeah.
If you don't have another blessing or a blessed weapon option.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to play with him for sure. And playing against him, I think I'm going to be a little worrisome too.
Yeah. I think there was one last point I wanted to hit on with Magnus and Invictus, and then we can be done. Or I'll be done with what I want to say. I did want to mention that when he is a mercenary, so in a mercenary force, he is friendly faction and will benefit from all of your buffs.
Yes.
I think that almost everyone can find a spot for Magnus and Invictus if they want to. I think he is super solid, and everyone's going to maybe decide for themselves whether they want to, buy this new model and play it in their games. I do think that if you're a mercenary player, it's a requirement. I think that he is going to be so much stronger once you can get buffs on him, on either of them, that for everyone else, it's like, oh yeah, I can see why I would play that. I think it is basically a requirement for any mercenary list. I think your first thing is you decide your caster, and then you put Magnus in, and then you build the rest of your list.
Yeah, I think a lot of mercenary forces are definitely going to be doing that, especially those who can put out the right kinds of buffs on these two models, for sure.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. So that's I think that's about all of our thoughts on this. Unless we want to try and make any other predictions on what we think we're going to see with this guy, I don't feel like I'm an effective prognosticator and aficionado of what the meta is going to try.
No, I think that in Mark IV, with the player base being in such flux, that trying to predict the meta almost seems futile. Yeah. I don't think that there's much to go on. I just don't know where things are going to land, and I don't know the Mark IV factions that have come out so far well enough to kind of guess on them either. I'm basing almost all my knowledge off of Legacy. I've only played a few games into the actual Mark IV factions, and I just don't know what all the different tools that they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see, and I think we'll have some fun with it. Thank you for listening to Focus, Fury, and Friends, the essence of a good time.